All right, welcome back to the Conquest Corner. On this particular episode, we are going to start going through some updates. So these were put out the other week. One, got a little busy doing some stuff, including a haircut yesterday because it was real bad. I didn't want to record until I got that done. But also had a tournament this previous weekend, and I wanted to actually get games in both with, I played my Sorcerer Kings, but also just with other people around to discuss both updates, see what sort of changes happen, what sort of alterations they do to the list, all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to see all of that before I go through it, and that way I could kind of digest it more. But also, certain weekends are busy. Like I know this week's not too bad, but the following week for me is just going to be atrociously full. So we'll get to all of that though. So for this one, what we're actually going to end up taking a look at then, we are going to look at the base updates for ideally everyone. We'll see how long this goes. I don't want to make it go too long. Skipping Dweg because I want to do their own separate thing since they got the full entire redesign, and skipping Weaver Quartz obviously because we do want to discuss that, but that's going to be start recording that a little bit later this week. Keep in mind if you want to pick up any of this sort of stuff for Conquest, we do have that discount code in the notes below. It's Train Kicker, saves you 10%, helps out the show as well. So we'll get into this and let's see what we have. All right, so this is for the September updates. What's nice, they didn't always do this. I remember in the past having to go through the rulebooks looking for updated sections. Usually they would color code it, but sometimes the color coding wouldn't be changed, was missed, or would stay between editions. But now at least they give you the basing of updates and potentially as important, they tell you the why. I know at least for a lot of players, when you take a look at it, it's useful to know, well, why did they think this was necessary? There's always this this concept of games of essentially rules as written or rules as intended. The problem is we are often not the game designers or in the minds of the game designers. So when you say as intended, how can I know what you intend? When they explain it this way, and GW started doing this to at least a reasonable extent as well, at least for 40k. I haven't checked for all the other ones. Explaining why you made the decisions that you did. That means later, if some sort of discussion comes up, oh, I'm not sure how this works or anything like that. We've had some thought or some view into the way you think about it. So maybe now we can make a more informed decision when we don't feel something is covered. Because let's face it, they do FAQs and that kind of stuff for a reason. So let's take a look at some of these overall game changes. One, fluid formation. Fluid formation, one useful thing about it was, yes, no one can move further than move, but you got to do a rotation after that. Because essentially fluid formation was a reform, which meant that I could actually gain distances from that because I could start as something nice and small, stack out wide, rotate as I need, and now my charge distance could become much closer. Or maybe now my shooting unit is in effective range and all of that. Well, no, they said, hey, you get a free additional reform at the beginning of the action. It has a maximum of 3 stands in the front row. At the beginning and end. So they just stop you from being able to use your free reform to just go crazy with this. And then they talk of the other part is the same, that you can draw line of sight from any arc and all stuff like that. They said, hey, we're not going to change charge distance anymore. All right, fire in advance. Fire in advance means exactly what the name says, fire in advance. You no longer get to fire. You essentially get to advance, shoot, and use it to potentially back away. So you get that free additional march. After if your first one's a move, your second one's a volley, you can move again. Or really, it was second action was a volley. It really didn't matter the reason why, but all to what people would do. You'd sit out of range, move forward, shoot, and then walk backwards. And you would sit just out of the range. Or aim, shoot, and then back up, so that way it's harder for you to reach me. But no more sideways or backwards. So, sorry. Supremacy roll is back to what it was. So, I've been playing the game for a good number of years. Maybe there was some other format at some other point, not that I'm aware of, but there could be. But the main way throughout time this game has done supremacy is part of this. It was whoever had less cards got the plus or minus one. But it used to be whoever won the roll went. Then they swapped it to like, hey, no, we're just going to try to switch it back and forth. Did you win the supremacy roll last time? Well, I got the bonus this time. And I get to do, whoever wins it will get to choose first or second. They now sort of taken the best of both of those. So it is now based on cards. Whoever has less cards gets a plus or minus one, but whoever wins it gets a choice of who goes first. As someone who plays Sorcerer Kings, yes, this hurts. I pretty much maybe the first round. Otherwise, I pretty much never actually have the plus or minus one because I just have more cards in general. But yeah, it's a good balance because I will tell you, when I had the ability to realistically have good shots at going first, because, depending early on, better chances of, just the random rolls. And then maybe I have that roll bonus and things like that for later rounds where it really, really matters. That means I could do things that were probably not the way they intended. Having cards is an advantage. Being able to delay is an advantage. It's the same reason why a lot of people, depending on types of list, you'll have your characters who won't do anything go early in the stack if you're not trying to get certain things done, especially if it's say round 2 or 3 where I want you to commit and then I come in. Because if I go in early, maybe I'm just doing a move charge, you would actually get the swing. No, I want that unit to go later. Having cards is an advantage. So they've effectively, in many ways, lessened that advantage. Because in those rounds where it really matters, rounds say 4 or 5, we're setting off. Whoever gets this charge is going to win that combat. The tournament I was just in, actually, I was facing, some Flame Berserkers, I had a unit of ghouls, and at one another, whoever goes first probably just about defeats the other one, depending which way it goes. But I had more cards. So, lose that roll, boom, get eaten instead. So it's fine. It's a good change. It doesn't help me, but keep in mind, whenever you're reviewing something, you should be reviewing it or looking at it or considering it, not from am I better, but does it make the game better? And overall, it helps the game. Lethal Demise. Lethal Demise was very, very deadly depending on your units. When I would take that with Origami Warriors, especially when the Hatsu could double heal someone, can't do that anymore, that you did 5-6 wounds. Okay, that's fine. I'll heal back. Now there's 4 more essentially that you're going to take while you're in combat and all of that. Because of multiple armies also taking a look at you, Spires, their ability to heal up units that could have lethal demise means that someone could just keep taking hit after hit in large amounts. If we remember the way that Aura Death used to be a similar idea. It was a per stand sort of concept, which meant if I could buff it up in certain ways, having more stands with it could hurt you a lot more. Well, no, now they made it a flat number. They did the same thing with lethal demise. Every stand that has lethal demise has the rule lethal demise X. And when you destroy that stand, notice when any regiment currently in contact with a stand causes a stand with a special rule to be destroyed. So if you're in close combat and I destroy your stand, then I take X hits, whatever that X is. It is so far, as everyone I've seen, I haven't looked through every single unit, but everyone I've seen, it is less than obviously the wounds characteristic. Usually, it's still a decent amount. I know in Origamis, it's still a 4. I think it was like the Flame Berserkers or whatever had it. I think theirs was a 2. I think it was the Lost. Theirs was like a 4, but they had ways of buffing it up. Because at one point, I was taking like 7 per because of one special stand with Ardent Creed. I believe it was Ardent Creed. I went through the direct stuff, but I had to look through it again to make sure who has what. So, overall, a good, balanced decision. Much like they did for Aura Death. Obscuring. Terrain now has essentially size when we're talking about obscuring. So that way, some sort of every terrain doesn't block absolutely everything. What I wasn't sure at first is, did we have to decide what it was? So it says, should a regiment have all of its stands in old trees? Hey, no penalty. That's fine. They see through it. All that's normal. It's the first part that says, hey, you would obscure, has the barrage characteristics. Regiments only benefit from obscuring if its size is equal to or less than the size or elevation of a zonal piece of terrain. So now their sizes. Now, in where is it? Here it is. That's what I was looking for. In the tournament scenario pack, they put the sizes of the terrain, like elevations. So forest, hey, 3. So they tell us how big that is. Whereas other ones, notice it's obstructing, but hey, hills are only elevation 2 and obstructing. So if you're bigger, you're not going to get it. That's the one thing we weren't sure at first. I thought you might have to actually talk and figure that out. But luckily, it's a part never bothered looking at, but they do actually have it in here. So we do actually have that now, which is good. Oh, there it is. So that means your giant monsters can't just sit on everything and get it automatically. That also does mean the size 4 things like the TLAOK Eternal or the Tontor. No, you're not blocking one of those things. The whole idea that brontosaurus and stuff like that were, as tall as some of the biggest trees or taller so they could deal at least from the top. They have a couple small wording adjustments. The basic thing is that, hey, when you have the X rule set you to a value, have plus X, you can add that amount. There you go. And same concept with draw events. Like, hey, if you have a plus X rule, assume you had a 0 before unless we told you a different number. Doesn't really change anything, but it just helps make sure that it's clear for people. Keep in mind when they write rules and do all this stuff, you do have to write them or design them or talk about them in ways to make sure that someone who's never touched a war game can make sense of it. We all, I know at least for me, I've been playing war games for like 20 years. So like, well, yeah, you give me a plus and I don't have it. Oh, it's a 0. Yeah, but is that necessarily as clear for someone who's never touched any of this stuff before? Just to make sure they understand the way that works. Fly, yeah, you don't care unless you land on it. They said, yeah, marching or charging over zonal terrain is not affected by a piece of zonal terrain unless it started or ended these actions on it. So you begin or stop on it, you care. Otherwise, it doesn't affect you whatsoever. And then again, just a clarification. Supremacy thing, it's not a change. It just makes it look like it was in the rules for all the different armies. All right, so those are the base rule changes. Very light. Really, it's you can't use essentially your free reform from your fluid formation. You can't use that to improve your charge distances. Your lethal demise now is pretty set. All right, so let's actually take a look at some of the factions then. All right, so first up are 100 Kingdoms. 100 Kingdoms, a few of the big changes they got. One, a lot of their characters went down by 10 points. Depending on what you were looking at, so at least some of the lists that I was facing rather often was Cav type lists. So in Cav type lists, you're taking them out of Noble Lord, saving about 10 points. That alone probably isn't doing you anything too big because you can take veteran on units and not everyone's most people's veteran is about 10 or so points. Depending on what you're taking, you could probably now vet up a few more of your units, or you're essentially vetting up a few of them for free, maybe open some points for some other upgrades. Maybe some of these characters can now take something that they didn't before. Your Imperial Officer, that particular regiment now gets Bodyguard, which Bodyguard's always nice because Bodyguard means that you can refuse duels and not take any negatives. However, if you are facing something that forces you to duel, no, you still have to do it. Advanced Infantry Training, hey, they get the support +1. I said, they no longer need the clause for if they had the support X on men-armed because, hey, they're the only ones with it. Because now, as it says, the only ones without innate support will now have it. So they used to talk about what your base was. Men-armed now have the support, so you can just add 1 to it. And Veteran Guard Training, pretty much everything in the game went down at most to Tenacious 1. So if you had Tenacious 2, pretty much your Tenacious is now a 1. Anywhere you look, that's what you got. So Men-at-Arms. Men-at-Arms were always a nice cheap option if we take a look at them. Kind of staring at them. So 110 points, these guys. But okay, on like 3 is not the greatest resolve, but a pretty cheap to stand on the back field objective, or as a sort of support piece. But they never had support, so you're taking them maybe to go stand on the back, not really much else. Hey, they add a little bit more in case you actually want to take them as a block. The most common way I at least always saw Men-at-Arms done was a little 3-pack, and their job is to sit behind, they'll score your backfield objectives, and everything else rushes forward. Well, maybe now you actually want to take a block of them. I'm not sure you do, but at least you can still do it for cheap, and they'll feel like they do something. Archangel went down by 20 points, and the Flames of Vengeance went up by 2 more inches. I honestly haven't faced an Archangel yet. I'd like to, because I just like monsters in general. But maybe that's the thing. Maybe I haven't been seeing them because they don't quite do enough. Flames of Vengeance is nice, but since it takes... Where's the Archangel? Boom. For anyone watching, although I haven't put this stuff out in a podcatcher for a while. If people prefer that, also let me know. But there it is. Aspect of Vengeance. Yeah, Flames of Vengeance on his sword. Yeah, so outer combat. So he immediately performs a charge action, all that kind of stuff. Should be successful. He causes 8 hits with Smite. And then the big thing is it ends immediately. So because it's essentially what he gets, at least this way, it's a little bit further, giving a little bit more if you're taking that sword version. All right, for other things, Crimson Tower are now fearless. Isn't that fun? It's kind of surprising that they weren't before. I'm sure it was a slow add to see if it would be too much, but Crimson Tower were very, very good before because they are good at essentially move charging. They prefer it in some ways, and they're really wanting to do it from the impacts. So now you're not going to hurt them nearly as much. Steel Temple are now fearless. So your elite horses are now all fearless. They said, hey, thematically and balance wise, yeah, it works. Ash and Dawn can now go more than just 3. They are now 90 points to stand, and the overall has went down by 20 points. Honestly, that one surprises me a little bit. I don't know. Let me know in comments. Were you seeing that no one was like touching the Ash and Dawn or anything like that? I was still okay. They might not have been considered the absolute best things if you're going for ultra top end competitive where everything has to be max. But they definitely weren't bad, and I thought they're doing quite well. I mean, your Resolve 5 Fearless unit, so pretty much they're on 5s. You're looking at defense 4, so you better hit them with something that really lowers their defenses. I thought a little 3-pack was fine. One, I'm not sure you're really going to go much larger. Maybe 1 extra. I mean, they are 5 attacks with Blessed. And with the Flat Cleave 1, their impact is nothing special because they don't have any Brutal and it's only 3 each. But I didn't, and they clash on force. I didn't think capping them to 3 was the problem. I guess they made it expensive enough where if you want to go to 4, you're now over 300 points. So now you're at giant monster territory, but you're more survivable than a giant monster. And you're going to have more wounds than most of those big monsters, are very close to it. But with more survivability, you are more survivable. I don't know, that one surprised me a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point that changes. But I said, maybe it's because where I am, seeing Ash and Dawn and seeing people talked about it, they use it. Maybe other spots people weren't. A Sakaria Bodyguard and Oblivious. So helps out Theists. And Theist is a very strong design. And Relentless Drills, only non-light infantry will get the plus X stands. The big thing is, another thing not mentioned up there, they talk about this in another spot. Pretty much light scoring has been removed. Pretty close to it. Like Nords lost their abilities and all. There's still a few spots where you might be able to get something, but pretty much that has been removed. So what sort of changes are we going to see for people who are taking 100 Kingdoms? Like I said, cheaper characters means that you might get vets on a few more units. You now could potentially see a larger block of men at arms, although I'm not entirely sure you still will. But they are at least a cheap scoring sort of unit, so maybe now you take a few more and they'll get a little extra out of you. Archangel's a nice change, and your horses lists got better. Adjutant are a little cheaper, and all of them becoming fearless means that your pure ponies lists are now stronger. Also on that, because one of the things you usually took on there was the Mounted Noble Lord, him getting a little bit cheaper helps as well. And actually, a lot of times I saw the Ash and Dawn. Now you're saving 30 points, at least there. Maybe now you're looking at some of those other upgrades. Maybe now you can actually go a little bit more, or maybe not much of a change. So, most I'm seeing it for horseless, unless you liked Sakari. Again, it's an absolutely nice change. Maybe because the people I'm playing run more of certain types of listers, haven't put them together yet. But I mean, not the best defensive saves, but good resolve. Oblivious really helps. And the bodyguard, so they can be a nice little spot for your Theist priests and all of that. So, actually, let me take a look. I'm sure they do. Oh, sorry, Theist priest. There he is. Yep, because he does take Sakari. So now maybe instead of Militia for Cheapness or the Bowman or Crusaders, hey, now he's got a different unit to go in. And hey, he takes the Archangel as well. All right, so that is for the 100 Kingdoms. I don't think it changes tons for them, but I think it opens up and makes some other options that you're already doing a bit more viable. You're probably not adding any units, but maybe you can throw a little something else extra in there. All right, next bit will be nice and fast. Spires. The only thing they changed was the lethal demise. So, like, Strix used to be, normal lethal demise. Oh, now it's a base lethal demise 4, which is no different for them. Desolation drones are now lethal demise 3, so a little bit less. Desolation Beast, hey, lethal demise 8, bit of a change there. And Degenerative Aura is now lethal demise +2. Now, like I said, hey, they are doing their full rework, which will be nice because Spires are kind of in a rough spot. Overall, you didn't see them EOS. I don't see a lot of Spires. I mean, if you have Spires, hey, great, you're having fun, but they need help. When you look at high level stuff, you're not seeing Spires really ever get there unless they're somehow just running spoiler type stuff because people weren't expecting that sort of list idea. But overall, they need some help and we'll see what they end up getting. Not sure what they should do, but at least with the mutation idea, they can really add some craze variety to it. Nord's a nice and short one. Hey, Ulfindar have lethal demise 4 now. Okay, always good. And the captain now adds +1 to resolve characteristics. Captains previously made your command stand a scoring stand, essentially, by 1, but hey, that was enough. So very common Nord tactics was rush forward with those, grab objectives, and then push past. Wait for, I can get you some points early, especially because there is at least one mission we can score turn 1, because it specifically calls it out. But even if not, turn 2, they're on and scoring while your other units are pulling up, while my units are probably nowhere near it yet, at least my scoring units. By that end of 2, you could be sitting in the front of the objectives to block me from it. And then we're on turn 3. Now your stands are on it. So Nords really Nords you could take multiple. Let me pull this up because it just makes more sense to show it while I talk. Although if you play against them, you're well aware. There's Nords. So the most common option where you would have them there is when you look at Raiders could take the captain. So 120 points plus the 20 for 140 points, you would now have a unit that actually could score. Yes, they won't outbeat anyone in scoring, but hey, move 6, all of that, they're going to be fast enough. They'll get onto it, score for a little bit, move past, and then I don't care if my opponent takes out my Raider units. Fine, waste your time on them. Now my other units, Bear Sharks, whatever it is, hey, they're better positioned to come at you. So, listen, they lost the light scoring from the captains. They will not be removing it from the Blood of Ahinyar special rule. Yeah. So there is still a way to score. You just don't have it base sitting on you from that. If we take a look at that rule for Blood of the Ahinyar, if you get a successful charge, you're 1 extra stand for scoring. So your lights can still have it from that, but they base won't stand there themselves. So they have to be running into people. A good change overall. I know at least for opponents that I saw who are running Nord's lists, yeah, now they suddenly went out because that was something they absolutely used. So now there's a unit that you'll still see, but if you're trying to like maximize what you can do, no, you're not looking at Raiders the same way anymore. All right, let's take a look at Wadroon. This should be pretty fast as well, because when this is done, this video will probably pick up with me potentially looking a little bit different, because we gotta go and finish this a little bit later. For this one, they talk about it, hey, since the rework, we keep having to change Wadroon, and we know that's a little bit much. But for the health of the game, we have to keep making some alterations. They also explain why they're not doing every alteration they want. So like Chosen Death are still going to be a Tenacious 2 against Volley, even though Tenacious 2 has pretty much been removed everywhere. I said, they're just not doing it because it's just too much. And even then, that's probably not the main problem. It's the Cult of Death rule and the Scion of Death. So Chosen of Death are a bit, they swing from way too much to nothing. The last time I went against them, they just weren't well positioned, so I didn't think much of them. But I can absolutely see, depending on what happens, how they can. And I will say, if you are sitting at Evade 3, Evade 3 is really great. If you have tons of cleave, if you have quality attacks, but it doesn't really do much if I get you with quantity. So depending on the unit they put them into, it can do a whole lot. So let's take a look at these. But again, they're essentially saying, we know there's more, and we'll get to it, but a little bit. Kiss of the Lostosaur, plus 5 points. Yeah, it makes you reroll successful defense and morale on that character, even during like a normal clash or anything like that. Yeah, that should probably get a little more expensive. That is super, super good. The other change is that, hey, previously you would re-roll morale for spellcasting as well, because it was for essentially any time with dice. Now, not so much. So, good change. Quaddle went up a little bit. Yeah, Quaddle needs a little something. I'm glad they didn't alter it in such a way where it removes you wanting to take Quaddles at all. Because let's face it, if you're a Wadroon player, you can get Quaddles, at least at one point, for 1 point very expensive. But another while, very, very cheap. Because anyone who wanted to pick up that two-player box for Yoroni and Wadroon meant there were Quaddles in there. So people selling off their Quaddles or that Wadroon stuff for a pretty good price. And the other stuff in there was good as well. If you are looking at it, that's a great way to pick it up. Do I think it's enough? Probably no. But I'd rather them do small alterations and then keep updating rather than something that means that everyone's Quaddles go away. Because it's also just, it's an absolutely great looking model. Cult of War Chant gets Cleave +1 because it was Cleave 1. And now it's actually, 1, more useful for a lot of the regiments. And 2, I said they want them to have the tools, especially with the new Dweg, because there's a lot of Dweg that now get to defense 4. So put in the +1 instead of a flat 1 means that now they can actually chop into them. For the Matriarch Queen, her supremacy, I said it's taking the tool, and not just taking away her light scoring. So she had a few changes here. So always active, hey, when they chant Lose Broken, active part in addition once per battle, this player's first activation and any subsequent entourage is completed, immediately return the draw command card step. Immediately return to the draw command card step. Then you may draw your next command card and activate it. Can't entourage again. So essentially you can get once per battle, you get to do 2, for all intents and purposes, 2 regiments. Yes, you can essentially do the character, entourage, and then, hey, you get to draw another one. It's the same sort of thing that Spires can with one of their supremacies. So, yes, your lights can't score because they removed that, but you can get 2 activations in a row. And 2 activations is huge. How many times have you sat there and looked and said, hey, man, if I could just have both of these things go, I could win on these different sides of the boards, because you'll have these 2 different units lined up near the other 2 units. You want both. You know you're only going to get one, and you're trying to figure out, hey, I don't know which one to go with. I'll go with this and hope I chose the correct order. Well, now technically you can go with both. Remember, you do actually do the roll first before deciding using the supremacy ability. But you can then say, hey, no, I do get both. I can make sure that even if you beat me on that supremacy, I'm not going to lose to you chose the unit to hit, and then I went here. And then you chose this unit to hit, and I went here. I'll at least get 1 out of 2. And Chosen Death, remove their standard, they gain Unstoppable. So they weren't supposed to actually have a standard, but they wanted them to have Unstoppable. That's fine. There's no standard in the box, so easy enough. For changes here, the only thing is really, if you were exactly at 2,000 points with your Quaddle and stuff like that, you want to keep that, you're now dropping a couple upgrades. You probably did have a couple upgrades. They took a few, I found pretty common. Not tons of them, but at least a few. You're removing that, and hey, your Chant of War is better. And I would say now that there's a potentially bigger push or a different push for Matriarch Queen being your warlord. Although if you're still running a lot of dinosaurs, there is still something to say for your like Thunder Chieftain and all like that because of what he does for those sort of dino units. It is a new day from the time you're looking at it. Dress a little different. Gotta actually no, I have a haircut for the other one as well, I believe. Essentially I had to go to work and everything like that. So we're picking this up where we left off. Where we left off was Sorcerer Kings. So taking a look at these updates, um, we know that Sorcerer Kings were just the most recent one to get their large balance update. So essentially a little bit more than some other spots, but mostly because also we saw what came out of Heos. We looked at Heos. There was what 3 or 4 Sorcerer King players. I believe it was 4. But at the end of the day, the lists were pretty much the same. The lists were pure fire based, which not too surprising off the simple fact that we don't have a lot of the other stuff other than some air, and at the time, at least the Trinovarta hadn't been out. But also fire was super strong. So they've done some changes. One, we don't get 3 activations anymore. Or at least not the general 3 activations. So the move, charge, attack is now gone. We have to do it honestly like everyone else. So Conflagration used to allow a fire regiment or a Court of Fire elemental unit to essentially have 3 actions. No, what it does now is if they're the next command card drawn, then hey, they get inspired and aim shots. And if they contact someone, that enemy becomes inflamed. Yes, this is a huge downturn to what it was before. It is better for the health of the game, but I played my Sorcerer Kings in the most recent tournament. Yeah, it means we have to definitely change the way that we do things. We now actually have to engage, like I said, much more honestly, had to layer our attacks much better than we did before, where before, certain units, I would just hold them back because I know I could reach you and you're not reaching me. And now we actually have to get there. And movement cues as well. Being able to even just to triple move something means you can really get up the field. And you're not doing that anymore. But this does at least make it nice that if you're going to be going through terrain or anything like that, now you could park whatever unit you want on terrain. They wouldn't get the inspired, let's say, say woods, some sort of hindering terrain. They wouldn't normally get the inspired. Hey, no, I've given them inspired, so they're set. And then they can go charging in. So you can at least play them a little bit more safely than maybe you did before, but you're not just getting them all over the place. And even then, I guess not more safely because they have to get closer to start. Farsight, same thing. Farsight used to give a air unit an extra action. Now you get as your first action, free charge or take aim. I was really iffy on this for a little bit, and I was finding good success, or at least enjoying its use, because Farsight, if you play Sorcerer Kings, let me know if you disagree or you found other uses for the other air rituals. But to me, Farsight's the one I use. Maharaj having to swap back and forth between rituals, so he can start an extra in the same round, but it has to be from a different, essentially, school or court, means that I have, after my fire, had to choose air, and usually I chose Farsight. One, I get to restructure my deck, which is amazing, especially because I'm often going second, but that's not a guarantee. Although you do have to time the card after the Farsight card, importantly. But I was finding for my Windborn Djinn, hey, they got the free take aim. That means they can move and then attack. Yeah, they're 18 inches, but this way they can get closer. Maybe they get to effective range. Maybe they can position themselves better. And that free charge, it was helpful at least a few times in the Trinovarta, even if, hey, it charges in. Again, I'm touching terrain or ending on terrain. Got the free charge, can still inspire and swing. So a downgrade for absolute 100% certainty. It is better for the health of the game, but yeah, it means you do have to rethink the way you do some stuff. And Flamecasters, their internal branding, essentially they no longer get rapid volley, which is fine at the end of the day. And like I said, instead they've reworked it to be part of infernal branding, so you don't have rapid volley, but hey, while they are inflamed or against an opponent that is inflamed, then they get rapid volley. So you don't have it base. But if someone, a spell or another unit or something you've done has interacted with you or the other unit before, then you're getting it. Yes, a downgrade, but this means, because what you could do before, maybe one of your early actions was to volley into using your flamecasters into the unit you want to attack. That essentially inflames them. And now you have Juggernaut on your sword dancers. Well, it doesn't quite work that way anymore. Elemental feedback. Like I said, its function is intended. However, just ensure the healing is no longer trigger every time the caster casts a spell. Hey, yeah, you only get it the first time. So there is ways to double cast spells. If your sorcerer is the warlord, you can essentially, if you do well, cast twice. Hey, now you don't get to heal often. I haven't been taking elemental feedback. After the last week, seeing just some of my units kind of collapsing down, it might be an upgrade I'd take a look at. Like I said, Maharaj Supremacy. The biggest change here is that he can't do fire ritual, fire ritual, fire ritual, anything like that. He has to swap back and forth. For the moment, it was between fire and air for me, but as more units come out for some of these other places, some of these other, sorry, not places, I should say, essentially courts, you might see something different, but that's the big difference there. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else really happened. Spell adjustments. It said spells that target friendly regiments will now only affect the regiments of the same court, with exception of Reincarnate. So this is the one that, not to say the other changes weren't big, but this one I found was exceedingly big as well. Just the fact that, hey, I want to give this a bit, it was causing me issues of when I took my sorcerer as air. I said, okay, hey, I want to do one of these air things. Oh, I took a lot of fire units. They're not going to help. It only helps the unit my sorcerer's in. Maybe I don't want some of those spells. Maybe I really wanted to reform that other fire unit, but I'm not allowed to. So they're closing it down definitely helps the design space for them, because now they don't have to say when they alter stats or change something, hey, how does, each court is like 6 spells. How do these 20 some spells interact with this one unit? They can look at a much smaller level. So overall, yes, it is better for sure in terms of gameplay, but it does change the way you have to look at it. And so they gave some examples. Hey, Molten Blades, yeah, you had to be Court of Fire. That's fine. What I will say, and they give some other options as well. Spiteful Winds, hey, it's 2 plus the defense characteristic, and then other enemies take a few hits. It just wasn't doing enough. Why would you? Listen, you need to be impactful without being oppressive. You weren't really using it. I was never using Spiteful Winds otherwise. Like I said, they altered it for bounty elements. It works as intended. So they could ride water elementals. Yeah, that's probably what they meant it to do as we start getting closer to water units coming out. Before it didn't really matter. Rajikar get bodyguard. Great thing for them, because now you don't suffer the penalties, because some of your characters don't necessarily mind fighting, but there's some very fighty stuff out there that you have no interest in actually going against. Steelheart went down by 10. Yeah. As now you have a Turn of Arta, as now you're starting to gain some of those air pieces. Really, I guess that was the air piece we were missing. But if you want them to compete, if you want there to be a reason to take the air stuff, it needs to be able to compete against the flamecasters. Sorry, sword dancers, flamecasters, all that kind of stuff, all the fire things. For right now, at least before, I'm not sure 10 points is quite enough. But at the same point, because fire no longer can get those triple activations, because there's no more overlap between spells of one court affecting a unit of the other court, a regiment of the other court, maybe now they have a spot. I personally don't own any Steelheart. The 6 I have are Windborn, but maybe I'll give them a shot and see how can I make that work. Can I do more air type units and feel comfortable with that list? For fun, sure, but and you can obviously do anything for fun. But in trying to feel like it can compete, not necessarily the most competitive, but feels like it can compete, does it do that? Or do I play it and just really miss my sword dancers? We'll see. And Raj, yeah, he loses forward force, but he gets 20 points cheaper. That's fine. Honestly, I always forgot he had forward force at the time. It would be nice. Honestly, it would have been really, really nice. But they end up giving it, as they put here, to the Sadar. He gets the forward force, and he gets to take him as restricted. Makes sense. I'm fine with that. Anything they do that makes him better would probably mean him seen. I really like mine. I really like the way I painted mine. In an army that wants spellcasters, and its abilities work on spells, And if you don't have spellcasters, you don't get your rituals, you don't get your spells, you don't get all these sort of things. You then have a character who doesn't do any of that. Maybe when some more of the mortal units is out, perhaps. Right now, I don't really take him, but at least you're maybe giving some reasons that you could look at it. So we'll see. And they talk about some typos. So Soothing Tides, it's friendly. They didn't say the word friendly, but they meant friendly. So Sorcerer King's got quite a bit of changes. Biggest thing I said, we don't get the nice 3 activations the way we used to. We still get a little something, but it's mostly meaning that we'll hit a little bit better. But your timing has to be good with that. I said, Rajakur, nice little bonus to them. Bounce the elements, nice little bit. For the spells now only affecting their particular school, obviously that makes it a little bit rough. So we needed some toning down. Let's be honest, we did. And pretty much everything in here overall is a tone down. Even the Maharaj ability. Yeah, now I have to switch to the other school. And like I said, currently for air, I was having a hard time using anything other than giving myself the ability through Farsight. Restack my deck and get that extra, at least take aim. That mattered on some of my units. So we'll see. I'm curious to see what lists will look like now. Maybe now people run more monsters. I know I enjoy running the monsters. My Trinivard, I absolutely played him entirely wrong. I was bringing him out early. I think he wants to be a little bit later. I think he wants to be more for cleanup rather than the starting punch, which is what I was doing. But we'll see about that to be sure. All right, for Yoroni changes. Yoroni were another one. They were 4 at Hios. I think Sorcerer Kings might have been 3, but at the end of the day, 3 to 4, essentially. A good amount of it. In no way an overwhelming amount of the armies, but a good amount. And we've seen some events where they're performing very well. I still do contend that they are very hit and miss, depending on what you're seeing, what you're going against, and all of that, because you have very strong units, but you have less of them. So there is options for your opponent to be able to take advantage of that. They do very well versus a one-on-one MSU style. However, now that the cards went back, or the order of who goes first now went back to looking at cards for the bonus, they might see some bigger units, and then there might be a little bit of advantage. But let's take a look. So 1, Damaru, yeah, they're Tenacious 1 now instead. They've essentially been trying to reduce Tenacious 2 pretty much across the board as best they can. Origami Warriors, Lethal Demise 4, and that Tenacious 1. Like we said, they're lowering that Tenacious, and Lethal Demise now works this way. So it's not a per wound thing. And one of theirs becomes scaling. So it's another instance where Tenacious 2 from volley was removed. Yeah, they reroll successful hit rolls of 1. So a bit different for what that particular piece does. I never used it, but that's fine. There's still a lot with them I have to try to do a little extra with. The Geisha and the Mahatsu went down by 20 points each. They're very, very expensive point-wise models, and they both gain Devout. I fully agree with all of that. Remember, Devout is a little bit of a double-edged sword because it's any of those sort of spells that are cast on you that you get the 1 extra success, and that also counts if your opponent does the same. It's coming from like their priests and all. And the big thing with the Mahatsu is it is no longer able to double cast the same spell. So you still get that, essentially can still do the 2 if you want, because it gets a free additional spell casting action, but can't do the same one twice. So you can't double heal. And the healing and Witness of the Void both become scaling. The healing, I absolutely get. That makes sense. I honestly, both of them probably do, because for what you can do with those, Witness of the Void, I'm trying to remember what Witness of the Void does. I don't know all their spells by their name, and the healing one, honestly, that's the one I use most often. Witness of the Void, this is the one to defense. They made it scaling because when it's not scaling, it's very, very easy to get off. You would then be incentivized to take, say, 1 big unit is what you often saw in lists. Maybe a couple, but usually 1 unit that's like 5 or so stands with a character, so about 6 stand unit. I have the unit that you could up its defense to 4s fairly easily, just getting 2 successes, and then heal it 4, which is enough to finish up a stand, or if you're fully on wounds, get another stand back, because it's 4 out of the 7 that you typically have. So it is a toning down of the Mahatsu, of course. Giving it that 20-point discount is nice. Giving it devout can do it some good because then it's easier to get spells on itself. There's so many times I missed a healing on itself or its other spells. But not being able to double cast is fine. Being able to do 2 sets of heals is honestly too much. And powerful presence, hey, as long as you're not in a light regiment, makes sense. They don't want lights to really score, so you can't put them in a your character in a unit origami warriors, and now you're a scoring piece. And last item, Trial of Nakarishi, you get Tenacious 1. It used to be Tenacious +1, so this way you can't go up to Tenacious 2. If you looked at those EOS lists, one, it got cheaper because it's not nearly as good. But if you look at that EOS list, every single one of them took this as an item, because then their one big block could be Tenacious 2 because you put it in a block of Kami. So what I will say, good changes overall. Essentially trying to scale them back a little bit without changing what they do. What I was really worried about is that they would remove wounds or anything like that, because this is an army that I feel is teetering on the edge of greatness and failure, because it is so few stands, usually less units, less activations, all of that. Depending on how the meta changes now, overall, that might be okay. Maybe it's too good or too little, but any large change, if they had done something like that, might have kind of really pushed them down a lot. So as a Yoroni player, sorry, a little bit more, my apologies. I thought it was out of it. I forgot. Shikigami are still bad, so who cares? They do nothing. In an army where points are premium, I don't want to spend 110 points for a unit of 3 of those. I'd rather spend the extra and get something for it. And the Daiokai, his sweeping step, is that they altered it a little bit here. Right, he doesn't have to move in a straight line anymore. So it's his first action. He performs 2 out-of-sequence march actions, ignoring all intervening regiments and so on. And he's just doing marches. He's not just going straight forward. And then he gets a clash at the end. So, honestly, and I don't think before it was 2 marches. I didn't think. I thought it was like a flat distance or something. If so, I could be wrong. No, it wasn't. Because I remember people trying to use it against me at one time, and they couldn't clear it because the distance wasn't enough. I think it was like 12 inches instead or something. So now it's just 2 marches, but you do get the full march. So what happened, what I saw was, okay, you're here. Actually, let me pop over here real fast. Your regiment's here. They're here. They want to go through, but they had to go through in a straight line. If you have too many regiments together, or you have, say, stacked, they'll never make it. They can't do it, essentially. Well, now they could just move off to the side. And hey, they still get to hit because, you march through someone, I still get my clash and things like that. And before, remember, you had to actually march through it. If you moved in a straight line and you couldn't land, then you couldn't even attempt it. So you didn't get to do that to someone. So now, if someone's beating you up, that's going to be a problem. You might be able to get out of the way. I still think the Daiokai needs something more. I think that helps a lot. I'm curious to see, but I think the Genya is still better. I still prefer the Genya quite a bit. So I'm curious to see, do other people like it? And is this suddenly going to make them come out more often? Maybe it's enough. I'm not sure, but I'm interested to see. I'd like it to, because I do think it's a great looking model. And that would be the end of this now. All right, so let's talk about city-states. All right, city-states. For city-states, they got quite a bit of changes, and let's be honest, they need it. Them and Spires need it desperately. The Spires maybe need it more. But Spires got some newer units, so maybe that does enough, but they needed it. Strategic stack, so the change is actually very simple. The biggest thing is you still work with it the same way. Hey, here's a regiment card. You don't want to do it, put it in your stack, that once per round thing. But now, instead of activating your essentially main stack, and then you may chain activate the card in the strategic stack, you may now just choose the card in the strategic stack. That's especially useful because maybe you have things lined up in a way where, hey, now's the right time to go with that unit. I really need to wait with this other one, but they're the next card up, so I'm going to have to do them, and then this other unit. Maybe it gets in their way. Oh, I strategic stack them. Oh, but you know what? if I do what I want with this first unit, now they'll be in the way of the second. No, you can just choose as you want. The other thing, and they clarify this, that phalanx still lets you be inspired. You just can't take the inspire action. I know at least when I played Old Dominion, when they had phalanx on some of the units, I never gave them inspired. I think even from the charge, I don't know if I realized that that was a thing. And hey, direct orders, a new faction special rule, which is very, very good. When a regiment is activated as part of an entourage activation, it counts as an activated strategic stack. There are multiple units that have the rule of, if you activate your strategic stack, here's the bonuses you get. Well, so if you entourage, so if you character into the unit, you just count as it. So you get your bonuses. If we take a look, we have right here, the main bonus is, hey, if you go from the strategic stack, you have inspired. And it will always count as under its effect until the end of the round. So you'll just be able to be inspired. A free having inspired is good. I thought some of the units also had things. Maybe I'm thinking of that wrong, or at least at one point I thought they did. Oh yeah, here it is, like Wall of Pikes from Phalangites. Hey, when they activate strategic stack, they gain aura death. Hey, if you chain activate onto them, they just have that aura death. I know they had it. I thought some other people did as well, but perhaps I have that wrong in my mind. But I'm sure there's others as well. Okay. Aristarch Supremacy, as they put, with that director's rule, he's no longer solely responsible for enabling enough strategic activations, so they reimagined what he did. So now, until the end of the battlefield round, until the end of the round, the battlefield order, the Aristarch has selected affects all friendly regiments on the battlefield. So rather than essentially getting you some extra strategic stack stuff, his order affects everyone. We take a look at him real fast. Aristarch, for his orders, he gives the regiment the character stands currently attached to, he gives them untouchable, or he gives bravery. So sorry for his, so if it's a supremacy, it's all friendly regiments have that. Untouchable, actually, all your regiments is really, really good. So, and his battlefield ability, hey, you can, once per game, reroll all failed reinforcement rolls, which is absolutely fine. You can use it early. You must declare re-rolling reinforcement rolls at the beginning of the reinforcement page. So choose most of your stuff. If you're taking a bunch of mediums, just choose it then, or of the heavies, because you're really worried about getting them in. Polemark is supremacy. So it says the regiment this character stands currently attached to, including the auxiliary stand and the character himself, get +1 clash characteristic, maximum of 4, and get tenacious 1. In addition, all friendly infantry regiments currently within 10 inches may reroll failed unmodified resolve rolls, morale rolls of a 6. And then, and then in addition, once per game, before you roll for priority and reveal the top card of the command stack, if the command card is a pole mark, the player may choose to automatically win that round. So you can choose the turn that you need to go first. That is actually super, super strong. I can see why they did that. They talk about, hey, they wanted something that Aristarch, where now you have a real choice. Yes, you do. Because I will tell you from my tournament the other day, sometimes there's that round where if you get that initiative, everything's going to go your way. And when you miss it, everything goes against you. So very interesting. For the current way, depending on how big the stack of cards you normally take is, the other ability going up to that extra clash is huge. So that unit will be much better. But just once per game, I can guarantee I go first. I might want to do that. I know in some other games where there's been rules like that, I take those sort of rules. Okay, they talked about battlefield tactics and battlefield orders. I said battlefield tactics orders now can be issued to any infantry within 12 inches, not just the one they're attached to. It used to be it had to be the unit you were in. Now you just go to anyone within 12. Especially good because you might not care about it on the character's unit. What happens if they're not the one in front? What happens if someone else is going in? Hey, I can give that to someone else now. Mentor's got an extra wound. They probably needed it. I thought Thyrens, Monster Thyrens, and then Haspis, I think was the problem. But a lot of them, I just wasn't super impressed by them. They just didn't feel like they stuck around and did enough. So Haspis are 10 points cheaper. They don't get the extra wound, but the Thyrens do. Ipicaros. So they remove the finest cavalry special rule. There's 603 companion cavalry, so you can now go with more companion cav if you want, and you get brutal impact 1. And close the gap. The regiment this character stands surge attachment gains unstoppable. Yeah, you should have unstoppable on your cav unit. You're like one cav unit, and those companion cav also get brutal 1. So Ipicaros gets it, and so does the companion cavalry. Yeah, you absolutely need it. It gives them that punch that they were honestly very, very much lacking. Clockworks went down by 10. They're medium now instead of heavy. And they lose hardened 1. And they get tactical fabrications. So can't affect them. They're mechanical. You can't order them or give them tactics unless there's a mechanist in that regiment. I said, as heavies, they don't really necessarily work so well because other things do similar jobs better. Hoplites just work at medium. Okay, make them medium instead. Promethean and Hephaestus went down in points. Talonoi went down in points. Thorkites, target of the enemy regiment volley. So Tenacious 1 because they're moved Tenacious 2. So a good amount of points decreases combined arms drill by 40 points. So quite a bit. And like I said, it's related to the scoring of lights. That's why. But went down by quite a bit. Whereas, yeah, an enemy regiment successfully performs a charge action against a friendly infantry regiment till the end of the round. Friendly brute cavalry performing a charge action against that get terrifying +1 to 2 up. Okay. I mean, they needed some help. Standard last oration doesn't allow the light scoring anymore. That's essentially before it would. But it still allows the player to seize and defend the objective zone to the bitter end. It's currently attached to activates from the stack. While it's in range of the objective zone, it rerolls failed defense rolls. In addition, should they be destroyed while on it, it counts as seized. So they have it. But, so what stops the light? In addition, should the regiment while in range, the objective zone can be seized. The controlling player counts as seizing it during the victory phase. Oh, okay. Because if it can be seized. Your lights weren't seizing, so I guess the idea is it could not be seized. Okay. Eidolon going down by 10. Getting a little bit of a change in its one piece. Stroke spell, getting some change. Untouchable is really good. Another light scoring that needs to be addressed. Yeah, Torque used to give scoring to a unit. I think it actually, I forget if it was reclassified their weight. I know the Biomancer ability does that. It makes a unit medium, I believe, or heavy. So would make them scoring, but another way to remove that. But give untouchable is good. And then they talk about, hey, yeah, impact resistance for 20. It didn't have the X rule. So now it has that sort of, it gives them just Tenacious 1. All right. Is it enough? It's something. I think if you're playing them, you're getting a little bit extra out of it for sure for now. But it's, it will revitalize to a point what you're doing and maybe make it feel more in line with what other people have. One of the worst feelings that you can have, and I know Dweg had this issue for quite a while, is everyone else has the cool toys and gets the cool things, and you feel like you're lacking. Oh, here's my armor. I had this thing. Oh, all your stuff seems to do better. Or I had this. Oh, your things seem to do that more. Where now, it feels like you can compete quite a bit. Maybe still not up to snuff, but hey, at least they gave you some extra. That way, unlike unfortunately Dweg got, where while you're waiting for your update, you have at least a little bit of revitalization. All right, Old Dominion. Host of quality updates 1. Standards are now free. Standards have been free for pretty much most people. They still weren't for Old Dominion. So at least now, free standards. For me, at least, that was freeing up, 10 to 20 points in a list. Prior to this, Varangian Guard didn't get free standards, and that's where I always put it. And then I found some of my units went without because I couldn't afford them. So, hey, now I got them. Acolytes, you get 2 power tokens if you destroy the command stand. Yeah, it helps. It was very nice to have. It's not going to make me take acolytes or stop me from taking them, but nice to have. Centaur Bajolmi getting to 5 attacks is very good. I really like them. They do good on the charge, but then they just kind of hang out. Cataphracti going down points. Honestly, I'm a little surprised. Yes, I know the higher toast doesn't allow us to double destroy units anymore, But I find a higher Tos allowing me to get those rerolls makes me much more consistent to take out a heavier target I would have avoided in the past. And now I can do it a little bit cheaper. So, yeah, they can't like the ceiling isn't as high, but the floor is so much higher than it used to be. And now they can at least do it for cheaper. Isn't the Hyratos, which is a Hyratos upgrade, is that 20 points? Little things like that are the stuff that I do so much I can't recall. It's 10 points. Okay, so put a Hyratos and you're still 10 points cheaper than you were before. Bringing in guards go up to 5 attacks. I mean, a unit that can be like Cleave 3, Line Breaker, stuff like that, have an extra attack, great. Assassins going down by 10, I still don't care. I would love to care. For the banners, I have to actually, Sanctified Lumber, I gotta take a look at those, because I don't remember what those particular ones do. Oh, you can count one restricted as a mainstay. It's 20 points now, so it lost, what, 20 points? Yeah, at 40, that's too much. I did use it a few times with Auxiliarch wanting to just take 2 restricted units. So for 40 points, I could do it. But then I stopped doing it. Once the centaurs are out, I just take them or something else. So now at least it gives a reason why you might actually use it. And having count always is inspired. Hey, 20 points less. With that and the cheapness to Cataphracti, if you wanted to, take it. Actually, that banner is exceptionally strong, especially in units like your ranking guard with Ziliarch, because there's those turns when he'll swing twice, and now you don't have to wait until you get to tier 3 to use it. Only Sacrament, you now can cast friendly regiments in the warband as a target of their spells that have range other than self, even if it normally outside the spell range. Their warband, before were they only able to do it? I thought that's what they could do before. We might have got that wrong on one of our thoughts. We thought that was a bit different, but that's okay. That's what it does now. Actually, for the other ones, I have to look under Dark Blessing. Dark is, yeah, inspired if you're within, once you're at tier 2 with anyone within 8. So going down 10 points, you might see it. No. For me personally, still a no. Sycamore gives the Dark Shepherd draw event. Went down by 15. 35 was way too much for that. Not bad if you happen to have a spare 20 points to put on someone else to make sure you can still Dark Shepherd for a while. Personally, I never take it. Armored Living Saint goes down to 10 points, and you get Relentless Blows now. And Profaning Reliquary is now essentially the same cost wherever you put it. I usually Dark Cenotaphs, personally. And then a few bits are removed, but hey, they're removed from other factions, so they lost it as well. That's absolutely fine. And the Vexilla the Lost, the character stand gains the forward force. So just making sure that that's what happens. And that should be it, yes. All right, so for Old Dominion, when we're taking a look at that, the free banners will free up a little bit of points. If you want to take one of those upgrades, maybe now you can actually afford them because those upgrades got cheaper and you now are saving points because you don't have to pay for certain banners and units, or even just other upgrades. You weren't taking a Dark Cenotaph before because you want a banner. Hey, now you get both. And extra attacks in some spots really help those units out, although, oddly enough, we're talking about Prodromi and the Varangian Guard, which are the units that if you're doing a Ziliarch Warlord, are the units that you want. At least I feel are the ones you want. And that means once per game they get to swing twice. So their stock actually has gone up quite a bit. I know a lot of people were taking more Bucephali instead. I still do like my Varangians. I usually take a unit of each of those two things because they fit different niches. They're taken by different characters. And they can do something different for me. Usually I like my Bucephali to show up later. My Varangians a bit earlier. The Bucephali, since they're a little bit faster, I like them. And on those nice of A2s, I like them to come bounding in later. But that is all of the updates. One, obviously, in comments, mention your thoughts on any of that. Are you happy with the changes? I will say overall, I think pretty much every change is good. I think some are not so impactful. But again, I'd rather them do things that don't really do much rather than, hey, this one change. Oh, we have to go with this now. Everything's insane. Like when we look at, say, for instance, Yoroni changes. There's nothing in there that says, can't do this anymore. Ooh, now I must include tons of these. No, they were all decent. When you look at city states, yeah, you want to take Thyrians? They're +1 wound. If if you were going to take them before, the +1 wound won't suddenly make you want to take 2 to 3 units of it, but they'll perform better for you at least. You'll get something out of them before they get chopped down, because essentially that's the problem they were having, I found, at least. Really excited to see what they do for Spires, because Spires need some help. And city states, I feel we know Spires are next, so that's why they gave them the lease. City states are after them. We don't know how long that'll be. So I think they gave city states enough and show us a little bit of maybe the way they want to go with it to be able to keep them, keep the players going and happy. I know with the Dweg, there was a big thing of just, and understandably so, upset that what they were getting was just kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. Well, now they have it. And that's going to be potentially the next thing we take a look at. I haven't decided if I'm doing that or Weavers. I've played against the Dweg, although I'm playing against them again this weekend. So I might wait to talk about it until I play them one more time, just to get a better feel for it. But if not, then we'll talk about Weavers, which I'm probably going to print out some things I did before to practice with some Weaver stuff, just to get a better feel for that army as well. I don't think I have time to do it before the weekend, but if I did, maybe I'll try to sit down and make some Weaver lists. That's a real thing I had to do, and just get an idea of what those lists might look like. All right, this has been belabored long enough. You have a few other things. There's still some other battle reports, although some of the ones I have recorded I'm not going to put out because they were pre the updates, and some of them, one of them, it has nords, but they have scoring lights, and that's not really a thing the same way anymore because the captain's in there. So it would be a very different game now. And when I played it at the tournament, because I played the same player who played that list, his altered list, yeah, it works very differently now. So you're going to see some drag stuff. You're going to see the stuff for Weavers. You're getting this on Thursday. You should hopefully get at least part of one of the other ones on Friday and a few more across the weekend going into the following week. And then, I don't know, I'll probably record some more games. Still doing that shorter form of the battle report, but I'd like to do a long one. I just haven't had a chance lately. And I'm actually going to be in a league where we're starting at 1,000 points building up. I haven't decided what army or what thing I want to run for that, but I'm probably going to go through and do some stuff related to that process as well. Just, sort of how to build up from there, because that's the thing that I'm doing as well. And then some First Blood stuff, because I know we have to do some more First Blood stuff. All right. Well, that is enough for this. On behalf of everyone here at the show, then, has a good hobbying. It's a great gaming.